What's up, folks? It's Pete Thorne. I'm coming to you from lovely Dusseldorf, Germany. Dusseldorf, did I say that right? I'm on a tour stop and a day off today on the Satch Vi 2025 Surfing with the Hydra tour. We're having a great time on the road. Now, just before I left on tour, the nice folks at Mesa Boogie asked me to check out an amplifier that they were bringing out, something they're reissuing. But it's pretty interesting because it's not an amp that you may even knew existed back in the day. And that's because they made it in very, very limited quantities and only by request from some of their special artists, folks like Vivian Campbell. Now, what this amplifier is it's a higher gain version of the classic Mark IIc Plus. Mark IIc Plus, of course, used famously by John Petrucci, Metallica, and just about everybody under the sun back in the day in the 80s when it was first released. So the 2C++ was available only by special order, and not that many people knew about it, and not that many were ever made. But basically, it's a more metal version of the 2C+. So I was today years old when I learned that Hetfield's Mesa 2C++ was nicknamed Crunchberries. So you heard it on all the guitar parts on that track at the beginning of the video. In this video, I want to dive into how that amplifier sounds, how it differs from the regular 2C+. I'm going to quickly walk you through all the controls and the features and the tones. First, I got to do a video call with some of the folks from Mesa, like Doug. Some of these guys have been there for over 30 years. I mean, they were there back in the day when the Mark series amplifiers were evolving and being created. I wanted to get a bit of historical information about the evolution of the Mark amps, all the way from the Mark I through the 80s, of the different sort of incarnations of the Mark IIb, Mark IIc, Mark IIc Plus, and how the amplifiers changed through the years. The Mark IIc Plus, of course, kind of seen as the pinnacle amp of that era. That's the one that always seems to be coveted, the one folks like Petrucci settled on as being, his sort of, main tone. So let's get into it. A little bit of a historical look at the history of the Mark amplifiers from their inception all the way through the late 80s. So I found a really good website called voodooguitar.com that's compiled a lot of information in an article about the evolution of the Mark amp. So I'm drawing largely from that article here, plagiarizing a little bit. Thanks, guys, for that great article. Check it out at voodooguitar.com. And I'm combining that information with the info that I got right from the horse's mouth, the guys that are still at Mesa Boogie. That's Doug West, Andrew Ladner, and John Marshall. So, okay, the early days. This is Randall Smith, the founder of Mesa Boogie, literally working out of, I think it was called the Doghouse. And I remember this building from a picture that was in the Mesa catalog in the early 80s that I had when I was a little kid. It looked like a little backyard shed. And I can remember the speaker baffles kind of on the door of the building. So Randall got his start modifying. He was one of the, if not the earliest modder. And mainly, I believe he worked on Fender Princetons. And what he would do is beef them up with a 12-inch speaker, beefed up power amp. Now, at some point, Carlos Santana hears one of these, and his comment to Randall was, man, that little thing really boogies. That's where the name came from. And then eventually, he decides to make his own amplifier, which is the Mark I. Now, the Mark I amplifier had an extra gain stage added in front of a typical Fender-style preamp. And the way that you would access that gain stage is by the inputs on the amplifier. So you'd plug into input 1, that was gainier, that had gain stage in front of Fender preamp. But if you plugged into input 2, that was straight up Fender clean circuit. And it wasn't a channel switching amplifier per se, that hadn't been invented yet, but you could use an A/B foot switch that they would provide to go between the two inputs. Carlos gets invited at some point around 1978 or 9, I think, to sit in with the Rolling Stones at Madison Square Garden. He shows up with a Mesa combo, and the Stones hear it and freak out and go, we got to get those. That thing sounds amazing. So they ordered like 6 of them. And the Stones became users of Mesa Boogie amplifiers from that time on through mid-90s, I do believe. Even using the Coliseum heads, which were like 180 watt variants on the Mark amplifiers on stage with 412s. Okay, but let's back up again. We'll go back to 1979. The Mark II is introduced, next evolution of these amplifiers. That's now moved the gain stage, that added gain stage, down the preamp a little bit. The tone controls come before the gain. And this actually had channel switching so that you could switch between the clean sound and the added gainier sound. Now, it had a preamp output and power amp input, but it wasn't like tube buffered or anything like that, and it was sort of less than ideal. And this is how we get to the Mark IIb. That adds the effects loop, real tube buffered effects loop. And they improved the channel switching. I guess there was a bit of a pop in the Mark II versions. The Mark IIb eliminates that pop. And a couple of the other changes, added a pull bright as well as a treble shift. Also, simulclass. This was when that was introduced. This allowed you to run a Class A circuit as well as a Class AB circuit at the same time. So like two different kinds of power amp circuits that would run simultaneously, hence simulclass. So you could run a pair of 6L6s and also a pair of either 6L6s or EL34s. And the first pair of 6L6s would be in Class AB, and the second pair of tubes would be in Class A. Brings us to the Mark IIc. This is around 1983. Switching gets even quieter. And finally, we get to 1984, the Mark IIc Plus. This is when this amplifier really arrived. So this has got effects loop moved down the chain a little bit, down the preamp circuit, which was better. Some other circuit changes. And the sonic improvements, basically the attack improved, more of a soaring voice, just what those amps are known for, that kind of soaring lead tone that we started to hear out of, all the players in the mid-'80s. Luke got one, Landau got one, and now to the Plus Plus finally. So with the Plus Plus, they added gain in some of the early gain stages, and it was just sort of like a more aggressive, darker voice. Vivian Campbell asked for the mod in July 1985, and they would call it the Metal mod. Neil Schon got one, maybe around 10 were made, something like that. Once again, it was never a production model, only by request. And James Hetfield got one, Kirk Hammett got one. So this is the first time the amplifier's actually been offered as a model, and it is limited. I believe it's limited to 200. Okay, so let's move on to sound examples now. Thanks for listening to my little history of the Mark amplifiers. Hopefully it was interesting, educational, all that good stuff.
So for all the tones in this video, you're hearing this half open back Mesa cabinet. I'm miking the closed back portion of the cabinet, and the cabinet's loaded with two custom 90 speakers made by Celestion, mic'd up with an Audio-Technica 4050.
So I wanted to give you a little comparison of what the 2C++ sounds like compared to the regular 2C. Now, we got to take into account here pot variance. And when you bring the EQ into the picture, it's very, very difficult to set two amps to be where they would be exactly the same. But that said, I think this is a pretty fair representation of the two amps against one another. To me, the regular 2C is a little bit more open, and that's just like the nature of a little less compression from the gain. The 2C++ sounds more pissed off. I tried to set the controls basically identical. I've got the presence on 5 on both amps. Let's take a listen to the difference in the tone. So you can hear what I mean right away, right? The plus plus sounds a little more pissed off, meaner in the lows or something. It's a little more compressed, a little more like flatter sounding, but pissed off, scooped out in the mids, and yeah, just a cool tone. There's a lot of crossover there, and both amps could definitely work for the same players, and I'm sure, I could dial them much closer. But I would say overall, plus plus, obvious choice if you're more of a metal player, and 2C plus, obvious choice if maybe you're a bit more of a typical rock or hard rock player.
Let's check out simulclass versus Class A.
I'm interested to see if I switch from this sound on the plus plus over to the clean channel, where we're at, what it would sound like if I was to just channel switch using this setting. Because the thing is, once you dial in a setting that you really like, are you going to want to get away from it? So let's check it out. Let's see what the clean channel sounds like at this setting. Well, the first thing I noticed is that I would have to even out the volume of the channels. The master would have to come up for the lead channel for sure in order for this to balance. But it's actually a pretty cool tone. I've got the switch, the EQ switch, in the EQ auto setting right now for this, which means that the EQ comes on automatically when you switch to the lead channel, and then it'll switch off when you go to the clean channel, because you might want your mids back and everything for it to be a little more neutral on the clean sound. It allows for some variation between the lead sound and the clean sound EQ wise, and it was always a feature on these amplifiers. So I'm gonna attempt to just pull up the lead master a bit from where it's at to balance out the channels. Okay, so this is one thing that I've found. With the gain set as high as I've got it right now, the potential is there for oscillation. So you just have to be careful. So when I pulled up the lead master, I got that oscillation. That's normal. The originals did it as well. Balance it out. It's just part of the nature of the amp. But let's check this out now. Okay, now I've got a better match between the volumes of the two channels, and I've also got no oscillation happening on my lead sound, so it's cool. So for the lead sounds in my song, I basically boosted the mids up a little bit on the EQ. I added a hair more gain by just bringing up the lead drive a little bit. So just brought in some mids, you know, went for a little bit more juicy mid thing to contrast against the scoop nature of the rhythm guitars. That's it really, added a little bit of echo. Let's check out what it sounds like.
Well, there you have it. Now I'm in Italy. Enjoyed some gelato. Thanks for watching my video on the 2C High gain, very special amplifier from the nice folks at Mesa. It's a gainier, more pissed off, more aggressive version of the 2C Plus, and it might be just the thing for you if you were a metalhead or a gain maniac, shredder, a high gain aficionado. Once again, available in limited supply, limited numbers, only 200, and now available kind of for the first time. Unless you were a big rock star back in the 80s. I'm gonna go enjoy my gelato because it's melting. Please come back and see me real soon for more videos. I'm Pete Thorne, coming to you from Italy. Prego, and grazie.